Hey guys, welcome back. Today's video is something truly special. Today I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Marcus Lehto. Marcus, thank you so much for coming on, my man. I appreciate it so much.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Luke.
So, we're going to get to some good questions that I've got for Marcus and that you guys have also asked for him in a minute. But just like with the Marty interview last year, there's one little thing I've got to do first. I just got to get my 30 seconds of fanboying out of the way, so the fanboy is just out of the system, and we're good to go. So, is that good with you, Marcus? Are we good to have a little bit of fanboying for 30 seconds?
All right. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Okay, let's see.
So, I mean, to say that it's a joy to have you here is, like, beyond the truth. Like, you are a hero to me and like hundreds of thousands of other people. The stories and experiences that you've crafted have, I know for me, have quite literally shaped me as a human being. Like, it's my career, it's my entire persona. I grew up watching all the Bungie Vidocs and seeing you and the team in those Vidocs making Halo games, going through the rough and the great patches of making those games. And my entire lifetime growing up, I wanted to work for Bungie because of what you guys made and what you guys were talking about in those videos. So you are an absolute hero to me and to, like I said, so many other people. Thank you just tremendously for the work that you've done and that you continue to do. I can't thank you enough for being here. This is an honor and then some. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the video.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate that greatly. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So let's get into the good stuff.
All right.
Let's kick off with a good question that I want to ask you, just for maybe people who weren't around back in the day, or maybe people who never saw the Vidocs or anything. And that is, could you just elaborate on your role at Bungie throughout the Halo games and also before and after the Halo games as well?
Sure, yeah. I just giving some precedence to it all. I went to school and actually worked in the graphic design industry for almost 10 years prior to even getting into games. And so my first foray in working with Bungie was through building the UI for Myth: The Fallen Lords, which was a fantastic game. I loved playing it with my friends. It kept me connected after I had joined Bungie and continued working on the UI elements for Myth, and I just loved that part of. It allowed me to get connected to video games. It allowed me to utilize some of the expertise of which I had worked on for, that decade prior. But during that time, I knew that graphic design wasn't something that I really loved, and typography in general. I wanted to do something different. And I had continued to grow my skills in 3D, architecture, animation, rendering, and wanted to apply my skills somehow on that front to make something a lot more interesting. And that's when, after I got my gig with Bungie I was just contracting with them for initially.
Okay.
I got this connection with Jason Jones. The two of us got talking about some ideas about things we might get excited about, some kind of universe where we could combine some of the things that we really got us excited. So I started working with Jason back, I think it was in '97.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just the two of us.
Really?
Working on what would ultimately become Halo. Yeah, it was just,
wow.
I think for about 6 months or so, we took the Myth engine, and he started working on allowing us to import 3D models, because prior to that, Myth was just sprite models.
Okay.
Or sprite characters, sprite content. That's all that you could do. So the first thing we did was I built this really janky little 3D tank, and these 400 polygon little characters. I called the Super Soldier at that point, and we had this tank with about 6 soldiers lined up around it that we could walk around, and we just thought that was the most awesome thing ever in the Myth engine. It was hilarious. It was so low tech, but it was something that it was the first step to allow us to start getting the editor up and running, start visualizing what this world might look like, with 3D content, and then once we got that ground kind of established, it was just this crazy roller coaster ride from there on out. And so I established myself as the art director on the project and continued to develop the characters, the world, the vehicles, all of the sandbox kind of fun things that we get to play with in the world, as well as building the levels, and many of the levels, at least, that include most of the exterior terrain and some of the Forerunner structures, at least the top side exposure of what the Forerunner kind of language might look like. And I did that from Halo Combat Evolved through Halo 3, and then took over as creative director for Halo Reach. As our final entry to the Halo franchise, as Bungie was in the midst of buying ourselves back.
Yeah.
And all through that time, I continued to grow my role. As the team continued to grow, the studio became much more successful and much more complex. Took on board role. I was part owner of the company as we bought ourselves back. And so there was a lot of great experience and growth throughout that, it was almost 16, 17 years of working with Bungie.
I was going to say, that's quite a varied group of roles there. I mean, you are, I assume, one of the grizzled, what's the term? Grizzled veterans, that's it. You're one of the grizzled veterans.
Grizzled Ancients. Grizzled Ancients.
That's the one. How can I not remember that?
Is what we called ourselves, yes.
Grizzled Ancients, yeah. So you were really there, like, from the get-go. And I mean, that answers my second question perfectly. Like, when did the idea of the Halo series first pop into your head? And clearly it was 1997, that sort of time when you and Jason were playing with the Myth engine. And
yeah,
I gotta say, it's quite crazy that I was probably not even one. I wasn't even 1 year old when that happened, which is insane to think. That's really interesting though, because you really had a real versatile set of roles there at Bungie. You really moved around a lot. And it's damn good work.
Well, thanks. When we started, I'm trying to think how old I was. I was 27 when I first started working with Jason on Halo, and he was maybe 24 at that time, had maybe 25. He had been working through college building Bungie. Bungie was real small. I mean, there was only 12 of us at the studio at that time in Chicago. And so it was just, so while the rest of the studio was continuing to start working on Myth 2, that's when Jason and I got together and started working on the beginnings of Halo. And, it was really just, I think I mentioned, it was just this mutual excitement that both of us had.
Yeah.
For building a universe that I think included some of all of our favorite elements from our own personal interests. Future military forces in an exotic alien world fighting a variety of crazy alien characters and such that ultimately became this real quick evolution of ideas that I think there's, because Jason and I were just on the same page and we were so excited about building this game. Basically trying to build a game that we couldn't find on the shelves. We couldn't find out there anywhere else, so we wanted to build it ourselves. And that's what I think motivated us the most, and it built this magnetism around it that once the rest of the team was from the Myth team was ready to roll off and start joining our team, now we had like this great momentum moving forward with this new idea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with Halo CE it really does shine through the amount of what's the word? Kind of collective appreciation you all had for what you and Jason had, the idea that you and Jason had kind of put together, and it absolutely shines through in the final product. And again, that feeds nicely into my third question. So, Halo's universe and themes are renowned from drawing from like various aspects of classic action and classic horror movies. But what fictional universes would you say provided the greatest inspiration when designing elements of Combat Evolved?
Oh, yeah, I think it's fair to say and it's pretty obvious too when you look at the game that Aliens was one of the biggest influencers on us with regards to the military faction fighting aliens in space and such. And so that was one that we were like, okay, what would be our take on that same kind of idea? And obviously, Ringworld from Larry Niven, the book, was a big influence that definitely got our the creative juices going in the right direction. I used Star Wars, especially Empire Strikes Back, as a huge influence, specifically for the visual take on the design of elements, the simplicity and straightforwardness of design intent, and then specifically like the story that each one of the vehicles, even the Master Chief, could tell just through the visuals alone, through the battle scars on them, and that everything was worn and had history to it. And that was real important visually for everything in the game to kind of have that feel. One of the things that inspired The Flood was a book Jason was reading called The Vang. It's about a deadly parasite that comes from outer space, picked up by a deep space exploration, and comes back to Earth. So that was one of the inspirations for The Flood. And then for the vehicles, I mean, it's apt that we named the Warthog, the Scorpion, and the Pelican.
Yeah.
All of these vehicles were inspired by real-world animals, and then the Covenant was inspired by like ghosts and types entities on that front. So they had and actually the Covenant, we started working with them and inspired by beetles and underwater crustaceans. So there was a lot of natural stuff that we used in real life to inspire us for the creation of a lot of these vehicles and a lot of the design language that we used throughout. And then, of course, I'm a preacher kid.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's right. I'm a preacher kid from like my young days. Of course, my dad was a preacher all throughout his life, and so religion and mythology, I think, was a big influence then to help drive some of the deep lore, the Forerunners, and the religion that the Covenant have with regards to them. So that was a big influence there as well. And then, of course, I think just in general, looking out over the entire franchise, it's a great mix of this ancient mystery and this futuristic technology that we get to play with and mix together like this great peanut butter and chocolate together that really work well in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, even the logo itself portrays that. I mean, as a graphic designer, I wanted to make a logo that had sans serif and serif in it, so we could have two different types of fonts from old and new mixed together to reflect that very idea.
Oh, that's so clever. I've only just realized that. The menu, yeah, wow, that's really clever. That is actually one of my favorite elements of the entire franchise as a whole, that blend of like sci-fi action and military sci-fi, and then also the kind of ancient mystery and the history of it all. One of my favorite aspects of Halo is how those two things blend and kind of clash at certain points. So that's really interesting to see that inspiration and that idea is so entrenched in the franchise that it even went to the fonts. That's really clever. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. That was took a long time for us to get that right as well.
Yeah, I'll bet that's quite a way to work it in. So moving on to my next question. So obviously we all know that after that, Halo CE was if I was to say it was a success, that's a bit of an understatement, let's be honest. Was there ever a moment, or is there like a moment or a specific time that you can think of that really cemented for you how big Halo as a franchise had become?
I think there's a handful of moments that hit me pretty hard. in a way that really made me realize how important what we were creating was to the community. Because when we first launched Halo, oh god, we had no idea whether or not it was going to be a success or not, and it kind of had a slow go initially, but gained a good following pretty early on. And we knew, there was something special happening there. We were excited about what we were making. But it wasn't until when we had started working on Halo 2, and there was such a hush about the excitement of like, oh, what are they going to do? How are they going to follow that up? And I remember being I can't even remember what venue it was when we showed the Halo 2 announce demo.
Oh,
and
was it E3 2000?
It was E3. I've probably 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the Chief dual wields in the middle of that demo and the crowd goes bananas, I don't know why that was one of those moments that for me just like oh wow, people are really excited about this, and it's something that you never realize just how important, bringing a character to life like the Master Chief and making a game as in depth as what we were trying to do with Halo, how important it is to the community in general. Yeah. And seeing like the fans gather at E3 and seeing how important it was to them, I think I just really made a deep impact on almost everybody at Bungie, and gave us this fuel and this fire to continue doing our best to make the games better. And then later on, after we continued with the success of the franchise, and we were just like, oh my gosh, we cannot screw this up, and we were so worried about letting the community down. But it's like watching the fans walk around in cosplay and seeing the world that they imagine from Halo come to life for real for them in the community. Like walking down Hollywood Boulevard and seeing the Master Chief hanging out with Spider-Man and some of the Transformers. I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? This is crazy. And it was so important for the community, and how it brought them together. And we saw relationships form and people meet and that never would have met otherwise. And in many cases, got them through a really tough time in their own personal lives, or provided some really great outlet for them that was hugely inspirational for both them and us. And it was something that I don't think we could have ever realized it would have had that kind of positive impact and affected us so dramatically as well.
Yeah, I think there are two major points there. The fact that it got so many people through rough times. I can attest to that. Halo's been there for me when I've been having like bad times in real life. Halo has always been there. Like 2004, that era was not great for me, I'll be honest, for personal reasons, but Halo 2 in particular, like, absolutely got me through that. Like, I don't know how different I would have been if it wasn't for Halo 2. So, I mean, I have you and the guys to thank for that. And also the idea of just, like you said, seeing Chief on Hollywood Boulevard, some dude dressed as Chief alongside, like, Spider-Man, and that I cannot imagine how just utterly insane that must have been for the first time. Because, like, for those who don't know, Hollywood Boulevard is, like, that is a big deal. I mean, it's where all the stars are. It's where people go to, like, cosplay and, like, have people take pictures of them cosplaying as, like, movie characters and stuff. So having Chief there, but I cannot imagine how that must have felt, honestly. That must have been, like, just insanity. It's
surreal. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'll bet. Okay, so moving forward, skipping forward a little bit in the years. Obviously, after Halo Reach, you guys and Bungie moved on from Halo, and Reach was your last game. However, were there ever any concepts for a Bungie version of Halo 4? And if there weren't any concepts for it, how would you have personally handled a sequel to Halo 3?
Yeah, we did mull it over a little bit. I mean, we ended Halo 3 with a "Wake me when you need me," and and we knew that if we were going to launch into the chief story beyond Halo 3, that it was going to be a big trilogy. It would require a multi-game series, and we knew we would probably want to introduce some bit of Forerunner mystery that we hadn't yet talked about. Maybe going to the world similar to what 343 did. We would probably have kept the Forerunners much more a mystery, and introduced the chief to a different set of enemies as well. But so it's not all dissimilar from what 343 actually ended up doing. But we knew that if we were to venture into that it would be so much more than what I think we would have been able to tackle contractually with Microsoft. That's why we went back and just looked at a single title, going back to the events prior to Halo CE, and built Halo Reach.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan, honestly, because to carry on a character's story like Chief's after Halo 3, with how well Halo 3 ended his story, you can't just do that in one game unless that game is just gigantic. I feel like I agree. I feel like you would have had to have done at least 2 games, if not another trilogy, to really make bringing him back from that ending in Halo 3 worth it. Because I think if it was just one game, it would have really nullified Halo 3's ending. Halo 3's ending was so perfect. It was such a perfect way to round out both the franchise and also Chief's story. And to bring him back for one game and just have it be one game would have been probably a bit premature, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely what we were thinking, because to bring him back for one game, it wouldn't do it justice. It required something much bigger, and it would have required introducing a whole new set of characters, a different world, a different set of enemies, and you can't just pack that into one game and do it justice.
No, I definitely agree with that. So kind of on that same note, question 6 rather, actually, is have you ever played Halo 4 and or Halo 5? And if you have played either of them or both of them, what did you think of them?
Yeah, I played them both.
Okay.
And I really did enjoy them for the most part. I mean, when I step back and look at the challenge that 343 had in taking on the franchise, building a brand new team, educating themselves on how to work with the archaic tools that we handed over to them, and then putting their own personality on Halo, which they needed to do. I was really impressed with what they pulled off. I think there's a lot of criticism, of course. We all know that for some parts of Halo 4 and 5, both multiplayer and campaign. But if you look at it through a different lens and really look at it just for what it is, for each one of those titles, they're fine titles. I really did enjoy the campaign. There are things, yes, I would have done differently with regards to the flow of the campaign, the introduction of some of the weapons and the characters and some of the combat. But again, 343 needed to put their own spin on it and needed to go through some of the learning hurdles, of making their own version of Halo. So
yeah,
I was always like hats off to them with regards to what they were able to achieve, and I can't reiterate how difficult it must have been for them to actually have pulled that off, because I know the tools for Halo were really very difficult to use, and there was very little documentation. Most of it was just tribal knowledge as to how to actually build a level, how to actually tune something in the sandbox for the game. So it was a a pretty steep hill for them to climb to get the Halo 4 out the door.
I've heard some interesting things about the Blam engine and how insanely tricky it is. So I know with Halo 4 they were building the game at the same time as they were actually building the studio, which could not have been easy. And I think the final product, although for me, I love Halo 4's story, multiplayer not so much, but the overall package I think came out pretty damn well, all things considered. What they were doing in the background at the time of building the actual game, that could not have been easy.
No, it was a real big challenge, and they actually pulled off some amazing cinematics, and it looked fantastic. They really they did everything possible to make that as high a quality as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the same beat, question 7, good number that is, 7. What are your thoughts so far on Halo Infinite?
I was pretty worried by what I saw last E3. I think the community in general was, but you can clearly see that 343 listened to all of that feedback, and what they turned around for this year was impressive. So exciting to see that that they took all of that feedback to heart. And I think they knew in general what they really wanted to do in making it look and feel better. The multiplayer overview was just fantastic and really exciting to see. I cannot wait to play the game and get in there and just see how it feels. And just the visual feel of it too, as an artist and creative director looking at the overall game. Really impressed with where they are taking things and how they're kind of hearkening back to some of the original designs. Yes, I know that's a lot of the designs were from the Bungie era, but they're taking their own spin on it still, and they're not just copying things verbatim. They're making it unique for Infinite, and it feels like it, and it feels really good. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm kind of jealous because I think it looks like one of the best Halos that has been created thus far. So I don't know. I really can't wait to hop in there and see what they've done with it.
Yeah, I agree. This year's E3 showing honestly blew me away. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. I was very, very pleasantly surprised with everything that they showed. And I think the community sentiment as well has been pretty on board with that. I think most people are, like, even people that I know that have been pretty critical of 343 and that I didn't really think would be that into it, regardless of what they showed, have been super into it and really, like, I'm excited to play this game. And it's really good to see again, seeing everyone excited, like almost simultaneously excited. It's very, very good to see. So, question number 8 is the big one. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, that's all right. I'm just like, I have all the hope and positive vibes for 343 when it comes to them wrapping up Infinite and getting it out there this fall. Like, I hope the community is there to support them as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So, question number 8. Now, this one is the big one. It's one that I was asked about 30,000 billion gajillion times when I said I was going to do a video with you. It's a question that I myself want to ask you, and I'm sure it's a question that you've been asked before, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it here. Obviously, Joe Staten has returned to 343 to work on Halo. Would you yourself ever consider returning to work on Halo?
Well, Joe's a great friend of mine, and has been for many, many years, and I'm super excited to see him back in the seat on the team working on Halo. Halo is definitely runs through my blood, and it's something that I think will always be there because it's something that I helped create from the very foundation. And I love Halo. I love all parts of Halo. And I've got a lot of ideas tooling around here as far as what could happen in the Halo universe. So yeah, I'd be excited about working on Halo again. I think there could be a good fit, maybe. But I don't want to, I don't want to presume anything. I've got a lot, like I said, I got a lot of good friends there, but even if I can just help out with some good words of advice periodically through Twitter or through email or whatever it is, I'd be happy to do so.
Man, Marcus, you can't tease it like that, saying you've got good ideas for Halo's future going around in your head. Come on. I would love to know what those ideas are.
What do you think I do when I wake up at 3 a.m. with some ideas that pop in there? Like those are the fun parts.
Oh man, honestly, that would be a dream of mine to see you back at 343 working on Halo, or back at Halo rather. I would absolutely love to see it. I mean, I'm not going to say that it could never happen as well, because I remember for years saying that I really wanted to see Joe working on Halo again, and never in a billion years. Exactly. Never in a billion years did I ever think that would ever happen. And here we are. So I'm holding out hope. I'm seriously holding out hope. 343, if there's a position, come on. Come on. You know you want to. I would love to see some of those ideas come to fruition, because I can imagine that they are quite interesting, to say the least.
Well, we'll see.
One day, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right then, let's move on to a question that's a bit different now. So, you've done this quite a few times, making a new sci-fi universe, but when it comes to creating a brand new fictional universe, where do you start with that?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of parts to it. I mean, initially, I got to start with some seed of an idea that actually gets me excited. I mean, if I'm not genuinely excited about it, I don't think all the right parts are probably going to come into play. That's why it's really hard for me personally to group think an idea for a game. I usually will find myself, I need to take some time, kind of go into a solitude state, hike up into the mountains where it may be, and just really do some deep thinking about what a world could be. I don't know, what if a deep space research vessel landed on a distant world where dragons and a technologically advanced race were at war, and we side with the dragons to give them an upper hand. I mean, what if that were an idea, a seed for an idea for a game? Just throwing something out of there.
Yeah.
If that got you excited, then the next step would be to start, building out reasons why everything in that world exists, because that gives context to everything. It gives meaning. And really gives them depth as to why those things really exist in the world. Where did they come from, and how did the conflict arise? And then is there a problem in the world that we can solve, or can we solve it? Can we bring a positive change to this world, or should we just try to find a way out? Let's give reasons and motivations to the player as to what they could do then in this universe to interact with it, and then creating characters that are a product of that universe. Just sometimes when you start figuring out the world and give legitimate reasons for why all of these things exist, the characters begin to write themselves, and the way that they interact with one another, and the reasons why they would behave the way they do. And I think that's a really magical kind of part to building a universe, is when you build things that start to crystallize and make sense together, that they form this harmony of these ideas that just kind of flow together, and that gets real exciting. And ultimately, once we build a game about something like that and get it out there into the wild, then it sparks the imagination of the community and what else could happen in this universe. And we saw that with Halo, and it was super exciting to see the books and the other things that were being created outside of what the game universe, where that was going. And that was incredible to see as we built Halo throughout the years, just to see how expansive the universe had become. Yeah. It was also overwhelming, to be honest with you. and it was something that we're like, wow, I don't know how we can consume all of this, all of these great creative ideas and bring this into the universe in a meaningful way.
You ought to see it now. It is humongous now. There's so much stuff, like even dating back like 10 million years. There's Halo's universe is huge, to put it lightly.
Yeah, and we had tried so many times to get a movie created for Halo. I mean, I remember during Halo 2, it was Halo 2, Roland Emmerich walked through the office, and I'm like, hey, that's Roland Emmerich. Roland Emmerich, is he going to make a giant, crazy, spectacle sci-fi movie about Halo? Or is that really what's cooking here? And that was pretty exciting. It didn't go anywhere, and I don't know what actually happened in the back end. And then later on, Peter Jackson was involved in the idea of making a Halo movie, which was going to be pretty awesome. Yeah. And then it kind of morphed into Neil Blomkamp as a potential director for it, but still Peter backing it. And then it all fell apart as well. So we were real excited, though, several times about the idea of Halo hitting the big screen. Yeah. Because I think it would have been a natural. And I'm excited about what's happening right now with the live-action series. Yeah. Yeah, and I can't wait to see where that goes.
I really agree. I think Halo is made for... I think it would work perfectly for the big screen and the small screen, honestly. I think it is good on like television as a TV series and also as a movie. But one thing I will say is that the few remnants of that Peter Jackson / Neil Blomkamp movie type thing that are out there, those things being landfall basically, are just so perfect for what I would imagine a Halo movie would be like. It still hurts that we never got that. I would have loved to have seen both of their visions of the entire series in the universe. I know Peter Jackson had some pretty crazy ideas because he worked with Joe, and I believe, did you work with him on Chronicles, that like weird project that never ended up happening? I can't remember if you worked with. Yeah, this isn't the question that I put in here because honestly I forgot about it. But would you be able to tell us a bit about Chronicles if you can like remember any of it? Because I know it's weird stuff.
Just that it was, unfortunately, I wasn't one of the people who actually got to go down and meet with Peter down in New Zealand at his home to deal with some of the details behind Chronicles and what could have become with it. That was mostly Joe Staten and Harold at that time. I'm trying to think of who else was involved. Trying to figure out what kind of collaboration we could cook up with Peter, because we were just so excited about the idea of working with Peter Jackson. We had a great deal of respect for him and what we had done with Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And so we felt like it would have been a natural fit. It could have been something that we would have been really impressed by. But yeah, sadly, that kind of just petered away. No pun intended. And nice. And it just, I don't know. I wish we would have seen something come from that, really. I do.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great. Maybe one day, you never know. Maybe one day Peter's like, you know what? I want to go back and make a Halo movie, and it all ends up.
I can only hope. I can only hope.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, like you said, he did such an incredible job adapting the Lord of the Rings series for movies. Peter Jackson, I mean, I grew up watching Lord of the Rings as much as I grew up playing Halo. So when I first heard that Peter Jackson was attached to a Halo movie, like, I think I was probably 8 or 9 at the time. My 8 or 9-year-old brain pretty much imploded. I was like, there's no way that my two favorite worlds are going to cross over. But it never came to be. One day, though.
Well, the thing that, and even though I know it was a blockbuster, but it was something that I think that it didn't get as quite as high as critical reviews. But the King Kong movie that he made had such an impact on me, and personally, because as a kid, I would, every Thanksgiving, I don't know why they did this, but every Thanksgiving on UHF channels out here in the United States, at least in Ohio where I grew up, they played the original 1933 version, black and white version of King Kong, and we would just, as kids, love watching that, and it was just this tradition that we got into, and I think that's one of the things that sparked my imagination as a kid that ultimately led to my involvement in building games in general, and my just this imagination, fueling the imagination for what could be outside of of our typical lives with sci-fi and fantasy. And when Peter took on King Kong, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best ever. I can't wait for this. So I was very excited about that.
I actually agree. I adore that movie so much. It's easily my favorite iteration of King Kong. That scene where they're all in that ravine and those bugs start attacking them, that used to terrify me. There's this massive worm one that grabs Adrian Brody's arm and starts trying to suck it in. That thing used to terrify me. That absolutely terrified me. That was such a good movie, though. I agree.
That's a nightmarish scene, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's the way as well that they turn the actual volume of the scene really low down, and they just play this haunting music in the background. It's like, God, the presentation of that scene overall was so good that I love that movie as well. That movie also got a strangely good movie adaptation of a video game. The game of that movie is actually really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well. That was great, and I loved the audio track, the soundtrack of that game as well. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, the sound for both of them, it was really, really, really good. It was epic when it needed to be. It was haunting when it needed to be. It was, that's a good point. Movie. Very good movie. So let's move on to talk about something that is very, very near and dear to you. The Mk.V armor. Obviously, that is essentially at this point it's like your baby, right? Like Mk.V is. Your redesign at the moment that you're doing on Twitter is, I'm just glued to it. I love it so much. But when it came to creating the original version of the Mk.V armor, what were some of the inspirations that went into making that iconic, I'm going to say the word, set of armor?
Yeah, we went through a lot of iteration on the Master Chief. When I first joined the project, I initially built this really simple tank-like kind of character, and it was pretty janky, low tech and low poly, to the point where it really didn't have much definition. But I continued to use that at least, and we called him the Super Soldier, and that was the very foundation of the Master Chief. After a little while, when we started building the team up a bit, we hired on a concept artist, Shikai Wang, who was really focused on helping drive and build the Covenant visual language. But he also took a stab at an early version of what would become the Master Chief. And we built that character. It was much more slender, a little bit more anime kind of influence to the character in general.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I mean, it was more... Tribes was a game that we played a lot at that time.
Oh,
and that was something that I also influenced us through the agility and we had super jumps and all kinds of other mobility movements that didn't make it into the final game at that time. And I liked that version, but the more we looked at it, the more I understood what this character needed to represent for the overall universe that we were creating. I knew we needed something that felt more like an unstoppable force that you could really count on and could take on an army all by himself.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of elements from the M1 Abrams tank to start building this literal tank form of a character that looked believable, but looked beefy and big enough and strong enough that he could really tackle insurmountable force of aliens. And then there's other little things like the visors. That split visor was something that I literally took from an old BMX helmet. Like BMX bikes at that time that were popular in the late 80s or mid 90s, somewhere around there. And I just kept driving that design with those basic foundational elements. I must have rebuilt the Chief at least 8 or 9 times
Jeez.
before I felt like I finally got them right, and at least right enough for the technology that we had, and the polygon count and the bitmap resolution restrictions that we had at that time for Halo CE. And I was ultimately happy enough that I'm like, okay, this is the chief that is in my head that I can imagine. And there he was. And so, yeah, 20 years later, I decided, making 3D characters and models of, like the Warthog and the Master Chief. It's a hobby for me. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It keeps me active. It keeps me, engaged with some of the latest software and some of the latest technologies that artists and creative people can use to make games and make content. So I figured, hey, why not try to rebuild some of the stuff that I built 20 years ago and have fun doing it. So it's been an exciting ride to kind of revisit some of those old designs and bring them to life in a way that, had I had the opportunity to do so with higher polygon count and with actually pulling a lot of the restrictions away technologically, what would it really look like? And so that's what I'm doing right now. Having a good time doing it.
I think it's incredible how well that original vision for the Mk.V armor and for the Chief translates into modern graphical fidelity. Because obviously back then you were very limited in how many polygons you could use, the actual resolution of the armor and stuff.
Yeah.
But now those limitations are essentially near enough infinite at this point. And I think it's a testament to how well the actual character and armor were designed way back when, how well it's translating into modern graphical fidelity. That redesign that you're doing looks absolutely incredible. I mean, I've seen loads of people saying like tagging at Halo and you guys have got to get this armor in Infinite, and I mean, I'd love to see it. I think it looks incredible.
Well, we'll see. That would be kind of fun to see if we can get it as an armor variant in there.
That would be so cool. Yeah, so on the topic of Combat Evolved, you've been for years now teasing us on Twitter with a few playable builds of really, really early pre-beta, maybe even alpha versions of Combat Evolved.
Very old.
Very old, where the game is just radically different, has so many different elements of it. Would you ever consider releasing those pre-beta builds of Combat Evolved to the public, or is that something that you'd like to just keep private?
I have no desire to keep them private. I would love to make them public. I'm just really... I'm still working through with some of the legal issues with what it would take to actually get them out there. The last thing I want to do is get sued by a couple of really big entities with regards to getting something out there that they may not want public. But honestly, I don't know why it would be that big of an issue. Yeah. I just fired up the 2000 PC build the other day and dropped... I dropped 5 new Covenant weapons that I don't think the public has ever seen. So I was going to make a video of that later this week just to show everybody what they look like. I mean, they're not anything real super special, but they're pretty interesting just to see some of these old things like a microwave gun that I don't even know if we knew exactly how it was going to work, just boil characters from the inside out. I don't know, maybe. But it was, at that time, we were just like, what if we did this? And we built it, got it into the game, and it just sat there. And some of them made it into the final game. Some of them just sat there and withered on the vine. But their data is still there. And it was just kind of fun to rummage through them and discover some of what was in there. And I found this huge box full of old CDs and hard drives up in my attic not too long ago. And... was pretty excited to find a bunch of data files, mostly, in them that kind of filled the gaps for a lot of the things that I had missing from Halo 2 development and even late Halo 1 development as well. So it's nice to have some of that all put back together, to see some of the pieces pulled in, and to complete the picture of a lot of the data that I had. As far as the old builds I have, I didn't find many more builds. I can't find the Halo 2 live demo build. I wish I could find that.
That would be so good. I know 343 have a semi-playable version of it in the studio. I think a few years ago they did like a showing of it that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was the first time since 2003 that we'd seen it. And
It's so good.
It was pretty unstable, but it was. I love that build so much. I love the design of New Mombasa in that build. The really like the suspended city kind of. It's really, really tall. That's such a unique design. I mean, I love it in the final game, but I'd be remiss to say that I didn't prefer that version. I think that version is really cool.
Yeah, we called it the Arcology. It was
okay.
the massive city off in the distance, and so that was one of those. I do have some of the data files for that we used to construct the city, so that was kind of fun to go through those and see how we had built it. I agree with you. That demo is pretty dang fun.
Yeah.
I would love to. I wish I had that still, but I can't be the only one with these old Halo builds. I mean, I've got old builds from, that from the Macworld era ones all the way to the beginning when Jason and I just got like AI up and running, and the AI were literally stick figures like running around in what was a very, very early version of the Silent Cartographer interior Forerunner structures that used going down level by level by level. And so it's pretty fun to see some of those. A lot of them only run on OpenGL, so when I try to run them here at home, I get either just a wireframe view of the game in its current state, or some debug spew that covers the entire screen because there's a bunch of errors that are running. But it would be really interesting to see if there are members of the community who may be able to help dig in there and get them up and running.
They're definitely people. If you announced you're gonna like ask for help for that, there'd be like 3 billion people that would just instantly be there. I guarantee. I would love to see some of those builds up and running. So my next question is something that it's a term that I've not heard for a long time. So in the mid to kind of late 2000s, the term Halo Killer was used like en masse in the media and just in like community discussions and stuff to describe games that aim to rival and try and dethrone Halo. Now, obviously, never happened, but how, if at all, did the use of this term affect like any design decisions made by you and the team? Did it affect them, or was it just not anything you ever considered?
It was something that I think it helped light a fire under our butts.
Yeah.
That's for sure, because when people said that they were making a Halo Killer, they were out to dethrone us, like you said. And that was humbling, because it's something that we knew that while Halo was special, and we would continue to make it to the best and highest quality possible with the talent and the technology that we had, that we didn't just take for granted that it was always going to be a great game. That we used that kind of those challenges set forth by the other industry friends to motivate us to make our games as best as we possibly could. So yeah, it was something that we always got a kick out of hearing, but it was also something that was a good reminder that we're all just people and making games, and it was a lot of hard work. So we needed to try harder to keep that quality bar high, and to keep the community as happy as possible throughout whatever we delivered.
I think it was quite ironic as well that any game that was kind of referred to as a Halo Killer ended up not being that good, or wasn't as much of a commercial success as its investors had hoped. Like, I remember there was one called Haze that was really big back in like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time that I truly saw that term being thrown around everywhere. I remember actually buying a gaming magazine and seeing Haze on the cover of it with just the term Halo Killer slapped all over it, and I was like, what is going on here? And
yeah.
I mean, it never happened, and I think that's a testament to the heat of the fire that it lit under you guys' butts, because you just kept on delivering.
Well, I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did.
Question, what was originally meant to be question number 10, but is instead going to be question number 14, I think. If you could go back and change one thing about each Halo game that you worked on, what would those things be?
This one's going to be tough for me to decide because there were so many things that I'm sure during development we would have wanted to do better. Like with Halo CE, we cut several missions of that game just in order to make the development timeline work. Because we were under such great pressure. Having just moved from Chicago out here to the Seattle area and building a team, transitioning everything from PC to development for the Xbox, which was a tremendous challenge for us. As a result, I had every mission of the game on these little 3x5 note cards, index cards that I had pinned up all over my cubicle in our temporary office where Microsoft had put us when they first moved us out. And I think we named them like A10, A20, A30, so on and so forth, B10, B20, B30. And so there were, oh my gosh, there must have been at least 8 to 10 different missions that we started to get up and running in between some of the other missions that we ended up having to scrap due to time and cut. And it was difficult for us to stitch that campaign back together and for us to figure out how the story was actually going to flow through them all as a result, because we had to cut out some sections that might have been critical story moments. And we even ended up cheating and playing some of the levels backwards just to make it work because we were under such time constraints. So that's on CE, I probably would have done that. Halo 2, oh man, the studio was just a mess at that time.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I would love to go back and fix if we could. Because, hey, during Halo CE, we were all a bunch of 20-year-old kids who didn't know how to make a game. And we were trying to figure it out as we went through this whole process. And by Halo 2, there was a certain amount of hubris that I think started to affect us as a studio. And leadership was ill-equipped with understanding how to handle a team that was growing pretty fast, faster than it ever had.
Yeah.
And it nearly led to disastrous results of the team exploding. And I know it's well documented and it's been talked about quite a bit, but I can't understate how stressful it was for everybody within the team. And while we pulled it together by the skin of our teeth, we figured out how to make it work, and we finally launched into Halo 3 with a better understanding as to what we did wrong and what we could improve upon as a studio. And that made things a lot better as we entered into Halo 3. Right. Halo 3, I'm trying to think of what I wish I would have gotten. I would have loved to get the Falcon up and running in Halo 3.
Was that meant to be in
instead
Halo 3?
We got, yeah, the Falcon actually was under construction during Halo 2.
Yeah, I knew about that. I've seen some people actually got it semi-working not too long ago.
Yeah, it's pretty janky.
Yeah.
That was the very earliest version of it. It ultimately morphed into the Hornet for Halo 3. It was okay. I was never a huge fan of the Hornet and what it represented or how it worked in gameplay, but it was something that it was okay for Halo 3, and but it's something that I really, really wanted to try to get up and running in Halo 3. But ultimately, it found its home in Halo Reach, and I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
In Reach, Oh man, I think boats is one of the biggest thing that I wish we would have gotten up and running, because we had them in Halo CE initially. That was more specifically in the Halo PC builds in early '99 and 2000, because at that time it was built in the Myth engine, and it was this huge, expansive world where it would take 30 minutes sometimes to go from one landmass to another by a boat. And it was ridiculous. Like
a long time.
it would not have made a good game, but but it was something that we were fooling around with, like, how big can we make this world, and how can we actually, traverse between these islands of activity from mission to mission. And so boats was the one thing that we were going to use to do that, one of the means, as well as aerial ships. But of course it didn't see its way into CE, so ultimately we spent a lot of time on Halo Reach building it's basically the Warthog of the sea. These boats that could ride along these swells of ocean waves, jump over them, and combat with other vehicles in the water. It was pretty exciting, and God, we must have spent at least 6 months of time working on that technology, only to have to cut it. And it was heartbreaking that we not only spent that amount of time working on it, where we could have been using that time wisely doing something else, but that we didn't get to, bring this technology to life for the final game, because it really would have made such a really great varietal change from mission to mission. Fortunately, we were able to spend some of that time in space combat, and I was really happy that we got that up and running, because that was a great little poignant crescendo for the game.
Yeah, I agree. Space combat was such a nice change of pace in Reach. It's something that the community love, and we've all been wanting for it to come back since Reach, and it never really has been. It was such a great idea. I love the scale of it as well. Like, actually flying alongside corvettes and frigates and stuff was insane, and flying through the graveyard of old frigates was a really cool setting for it. I love that mission. I do wish as well though that the boats had happened, because I've watched that I think it's PAX 2010 maybe, where you guys had a panel and you showed off some of the stuff that didn't make it into Reach that you were concepting in Halo 3 at the time. One of which was Global War, and the other which was the boats. And the boats always looked so cool. I've always wanted boat combat, and just like water combat in general in Halo, like swimming and fighting underwater and stuff, and fighting on water. So I'm hoping that one day that does happen, because I love the idea for it.
Oh, me too. It was really fun. Did they show this driving the Scarab through the glassed city? That was another thing that I was bummed that we didn't get to do in Reach. That we had a whole level all functional where you could drive a Scarab and fire its main head cannon, and it was through part of the glassed city. It was right after Kat had died.
I thought so. I thought it might be.
Yeah. That was a pretty neat level that we had to cut.
If we could real quick just go back to the point that you mentioned about CE, because I know there's going to be a billion comments right now asking you to elaborate on that. You said that you had to cut quite a few levels that would have at one time had quite important story info. Could you elaborate maybe on what one or two of those levels were that we didn't end up seeing?
I honestly don't have a lot of data on that front to fill in what the story would have been. It's so long ago that it's hard for me to remember what it would be. I wish I still had those index cards. Oh my gosh, that would have been gold to remember what all of those little missions were. But ultimately, they I don't know where they went. Unfortunately,
shame. That's a shame. Oh well, maybe one day they'll turn up. Maybe one day they'll be stuck to the bottom of a box or something. You'll find them. You'll be like,
it's possible.
All right. So let's move back onto the questions we were going to be doing before. So, which of the games that you've worked on do you think have aged the best?
I think, Halo 3 for gameplay. I really like what we pulled together for Halo 3. Both for campaign and multiplayer. And then I'll stand by Halo Reach. Even I know community had some issues with Reach, visuals in particular.
Yeah.
But I stand by that as being one of the things that still holds up today pretty well.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I think Reach has aged immaculately in certain areas. The graphics in particular look like kind of ahead of the time, to be honest with you. And especially the overall aesthetic for both factions just still looks absolutely incredible. I mean, there's a reason that people for years have just wanted Halo to go back to Reach's Spartans. There's a very good reason for that, I think. I love the Spartans in that game in particular.
Yeah, that was we had such a good time revisioning what the armor could be, what customization for armor could be, and just what the world itself. We put so much effort into building a believable world where the game would take place, and it was just, I'm super proud of what the team created. And at the same time, that was one of the projects where Bungie was really running on all cylinders, and the team was just laser focused for the most part all the way throughout, and to the point where we shipped the game and it didn't feel like any kind of horrible crunch at the end. Everybody was like, wait a minute, we just got this game done. What? Where was the death march that we're used to? And I'm like, no, we don't have to do that anymore. We're smarter. We can actually figure out how to build games in a way that doesn't harm the human beings making the games. And so that was a big part in what I really believed in, and I wanted to continue pushing forward.
So was Reach the first game where you didn't have any sort of crunch at all?
That was the first one. All the other games had a bit of a crunch. They got a little better as we went through one after the next. But Halo CE and Halo 2 were pretty brutal, inhumane, to the point where I look back on those and I wish we could have gone back as smarter, more mature individuals and redone it. Yeah. But like I said earlier, as a bunch of 20-year-olds trying to figure out how to make games, it was pretty rough.
Yeah. I remember Marty actually telling a story about CE's development. I think a lot of people don't realize how bad how bad the crunch was for Combat Evolved. Everyone always talks about Halo 2 because obviously Halo 2 was awful. But I remember Marty saying when I spoke to him that he basically ended up doing most of the soundtrack in 2 days. And he had 2 days to do it, and the second day ended up being 9/11. It's like, how do you deal with that? Like, you've got so much to do, but at the same time, it's like this horrific day. I think a lot of people don't realize how much crunch CE actually had towards the end, at least.
Yeah, that was a terrible day. I remember Marty. We came into the office. Everyone was numbed by what we had just seen, and Marty just came in and he stood in front of me and he's like, I don't know how I can work right now. I can't focus. I can't do this. And so it was a terrible stress. And it almost didn't feel appropriate to be working on a game at all at that point. So we had to take some time off just to, mourn with the rest of the country at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things that you just can't predict or factor into like a timeline or anything. It just
not at all.
Yeah, let's let's get on to something back. Let's get back to games.
Yes.
What work did you do on Destiny, and do you know if any of your concepts and ideas for Destiny made it into the final release? Because I know that the game underwent quite a few changes through development.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when we got Halo Reach done, we had a team of almost 250 people. And we migrated that entire team over to the Destiny team that also had, I think at that time, maybe 60 to maybe 100 people or so. It's hard for me to remember. And this was in our new offices, too, in Bellevue. And so it was a really odd and difficult transition to migrate these teams together and figure out how we were going to make them all productive. And for me personally, it was an interesting challenge because it was taking myself as well as many others on the team in leadership positions and trying to find second fiddle kind of positions for them on the Destiny team and find out ways in which we can be, effective and help out with Destiny that didn't overlap with the other cooks in the kitchen that were already working on Destiny. And so I found myself at that point, that's when I was like, okay, I don't know how long I'm going to stay here at Bungie, but I think what I'm going to do is try to engage myself and help out in some meaningful way. And I ended up spearheading the construction of the player tower and figuring out how to kind of lay things out in a way that you could build areas to meet some of the AI for your mission quests and such. And the very early version of that, there's still some remnants of it in the first offering of Destiny. But there's some elements of it in there that I was like, hey, yeah, I had a part in building that. And something else I did was, I remember Jason and I talked, and he kind of wanted to build the equivalent of the Warthog for Destiny. Oh, so we came up with some really cool ideas for an off-road vehicle that ultimately got cut. But that was kind of fun to work on too. So I wasn't there, I don't think, for more than 9 months before I decided to part ways with Bungie, because it was pretty clear to me that Destiny was something that I wasn't really connected to, and it was something that I wanted to do well, but I didn't want to be someone who was going to drag it down in any way, shape, or form. So I decided I would part ways amicably with the studio and think about what to do next. And so I did for a little while. Bungie convinced me to come back for a short bit, and I actually worked on a small back burner project with a small team.
Okay.
And we got a fully functional third-person hack and slash mythology-based game up and running. Huh. And that was real fun. And it had a lot of potential. And that was just in a 6-month period of time that we built this game concept. But it was very clear that Destiny was struggling, and it really needed all hands on deck. And in order for us to stay at Bungie, we were going to be required to move back onto the Destiny team for some indefinite period of time to work on it. So it was pretty clear at that time, I think this is the time I should probably leave for good. And still stay good friends with with everybody there at Bungie, but move away and think about what to do next. So that's what I did. I ended up taking some time before venturing into building a new studio.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, because you're saying that everyone was pulled from the side project to go work on Destiny and just have all hands on deck with Destiny. It's quite funny that now Bungie have gone back to, I think they've got another IP in development right now, alongside Destiny. It's quite interesting to see that they've gone back to doing that now.
I think they've got two or three games that they're kind of trying to work on. I'm not sure what the status of them are at the moment, from my inside connections.
Fair enough. Yeah, and also you said earlier that working on something like a sci-fi universe or just any sort of project when your heart isn't fully in it isn't the best thing, and it seems like that was your kind of idea with Destiny. It's like, I'm not fully invested in this. It's not like exactly what I want to be doing right now, so it's better for you to leave. I feel like that's kind of the idea. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see how you'd put your own spin on it, but that's totally fair. I mean, if your heart's not in it, I mean, on a very smaller scale, I know how that feels with videos. Like, if you've got a video that you're working on and your heart just isn't in it, you don't want to make it. It's like making it is just not fun. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when it's not fun, I mean, life is way too short to do something, to work anywhere, to pour your efforts into something if you're not really enjoying it. I encourage anyone in the similar position, if they have the means to do so, to, strike out and try to find that thing that really does get them passionately excited about what they're doing creatively, with whatever kind of job they're working on. So that's what I wanted to do. Wanted to just take some time away and cook up some new ideas for what I think might be fun to tackle next.
So that leads perfectly into the next question. So, what was it like for you going from working at a giant studio like Bungie to forming your own studio with V1 Interactive? What was the kind of transition like between those two very different styles of game development?
Oh man, it was awesome. It was really fun to build V1 Interactive, my new studio. It was terrifying at the same time because there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that I wasn't really used to doing on a daily basis with regards to managing the studio, managing all of the functional parts, with the relationships with the publisher and funding and keeping the lights on and making sure everybody's happy, HR things and whatever, you name it. It's driving a studio requires everyone to wear lots of different hats, and especially a small studio. But that's part of the fun of it too, it's never a stale day, that's for sure.
I'll bet.
with only a team, we grew to a maximum of 30 people during the construction of our game Disintegration. But for the most part, I'd say most of the time we were actually around 15 to 18 people or so. It was a pretty small team, and everybody is critical path. So every day you'd come into the office and you had to be engaged and involved in what we were doing, and that part was exhilarating. I really love working with a small team where everybody's communicating with one another, everybody's excited about what we're doing together, and everybody is always doing something with their hands to make the game as good as they possibly can. And so I love that part of it. It was the downside to that small team and having a small studio like this was it's really hard to cover all of the details that go into a game. And we had grown to become accustomed to some of that when we had 250 to 300 people working on a project. There were teams dedicated to certain portions of the game that now we had one person with maybe 15% of their time dedicated to trying to carve out and take care of or manage that section of a project. And that was really difficult for us to manage. But that said, I'm still really proud of what we created as a team, and that it was as high a quality as it was, and that what we actually got out there into the wild is something that I can look on real fondly of our the time we spent together making a game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine how just radically different it must have been from like you said, having areas of a game with entire teams built around them to having like a dev team the size of those teams. It must have been such a different style of dev.
Yeah.
But yeah, I imagine it's like one of those things where you're all there because you really want to work on this specific thing. So the creative juices are just flowing at the maximum, and it's like, I imagine it's a really, really good environment to be in.
It was real healthy, and it was a great growth for not only a lot of the industry vets like myself who had been working in the game industry for, like, I've been in it for 25 years now. We had a lot of folks who were 15 to 18 year vets. It was a great opportunity for them to dust off some of their skills that had maybe languished in bigger studios because they had just kind of evolved into managers and weren't really working on the craft that they loved so much. So that was real important. And then it was a great experience for a lot of new people straight out of college who were fresh to the industry, and then had the opportunity to be exposed to so many new things and required, to try to tackle some very difficult challenges that they would never have gotten an opportunity to do so in a big studio. So it was a good growth period for them as well, to go through the process of building a game from concept all the way to shipping on 3 platforms simultaneously. Yeah.
That could not have been easy. I mean, for any dev team, let alone one with 30 people, that could not have been easy.
No, add on top of that the pandemic and actually working from home and having to transition to the studio. to everybody working remotely and shipping a project, I'm still super impressed with how the team pulled it together to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should be. I think, yeah, like you said, the amount of just stuff that's thrown into the mix, and then you've got the pandemic as well. You've got working from home. It's that game dev during that, because I know obviously game dev is quite a collaborative thing. Being unable to like go to people's desks and see what they're working on, or have like meetings in actual rooms where you can draw on whiteboards and stuff, like I can't imagine how much harder that must have been.
Yeah, it was a real challenge, but we would make do with what we had, and the team really did make a big effort to stay connected and stay communicating with one another on a daily basis in order to try to simulate some of that office environment. I mean, we would just have like open Discord channels where people could just hang out all day long and chat. Just even if they didn't really have much to say, they could just be there, on microphone. So in case there was an interesting conversation, that we could just kind of feel connected in that way.
Yeah, I like that idea of literally simulating an office environment where, like, if you start talking about something, somebody else can be there and be like, maybe you could try this or something. That's a clever idea. I like that.
Yeah.
So, our final question for today, Marcus, what is your favorite video game franchise outside of one that you've worked on?
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You'd be kind of amazed at how little game devs actually get to play games. Yeah. I mean, I wish I played more, but I do make an opportunity. I do try to make opportunities to find time to play games. I've always been a sucker for Assassin's Creed. I love Assassin's Creed and Red Dead Redemption for that open world exploration and the RPG elements. I've always been a sucker for them, and I'll play them. If there's any new things to come out, I'll jump into them. Batman Arkham Knight for the open world and the fluid combat. The fluid combat system in that game is just phenomenal, along with some of the awesome sandbox toys. So that was one of those games that always sticks with me today. I would love to go back and replay that one again. And then obviously, I'm more of a solo player, single player, campaign story kind of guy. But I do jump into MP games every now and then, and occasionally I'll jump into Battlefield or Warzone.
Yeah.
Modern Warfare. Just to enjoy those and have fun, but I'll get my ass kicked for sure.
Fair enough.
So if I want to get humbled quick, that's how I do it.
What do you think of Battlefield 2042?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
It looks ridiculous. I mean, I love how they took all the memes of, like the past whatever decades or so, and kind of turned those into these ridiculous features of the game. So yeah, it looks pretty exciting.
Yeah, I do like it when games do that with the marketing, when they tap into like very community-centered things, like the whole Render Zook thing in Battlefield, where you jump out of a jet and RPG into the jet middle and get back in. That, like bringing that into a trailer and saying it in like a semi-realistic fashion is so clever. Yeah. So
I'm sure that'll be a whole bag of fun that I can't wait to hop into. So yeah.
Definitely. So I feel like I should ask you some more questions. I'm trying to rot on my head right now. Do you have anything else that you want to say at the end? Do you have any
I'm good, but I just would love to thank the community for all of the support that we saw through Bungie's era of building Halo, and to see how it's continuing to grow through what 343 is making, and that without the community, without the support, the love, even the feedback, whether it's critical or positive, has been something that has kept the franchise alive and healthy and growing throughout the years, and it wouldn't be anything without the community. So I think every one of the devs, myself included, and all of the devs working on it now understand that uniquely, and that it is something that is so important to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. That's, yeah, very much so. Marcus, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. I can't thank you enough. I'm honored to have you on a video. Like, this is literally dream come true material. Like,
my pleasure. It was fun talking to you, and we'll find another opportunity in the future.
Absolutely. We got to do something for Infinite, I think. I think it'd be cool if we could, I don't know, play some Infinite or something, if you'd be down for that.
Heck yeah, I'll do it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So one last time, Marcus, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you want to go follow Marcus, Twitter is Game Fabricator. That's Game Fabricator, right?
Yes, that's true.
That's the one. Yeah, Game Fabricator. Go follow him. Keep up to date with what he's doing with the recreation of the Warthog and the Mk.V armor that is turning out beautiful, and everything else that Marcus is doing in games. Go and drop him a follow. And with that said, I'm going to round this video out here. So thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This has been an absolute blast to film. Marcus, one last time, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
all right, thanks, Luke. I appreciate it too. Thanks. It was fun.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Amazing. That was so good. Thank you so much.
That was fun.